I'm making this video because it kind of dawned on me, just looking at the overall system, then comparing things that I know about various veterans. It would seem to me that just like the criminal justice system, veterans who are poor, this could be from where you were born, or um, your family. Maybe there's some kind of poverty there, um, or your health has made you poor. So if you check all three of those boxes and you're dealing with the VA, generally you're going to come out with the short stick. Um, you're going to be stuck if you're referred out to providers that are only within a bus ride, or, well, most poor people I know, unless overseas, you can't afford a taxi. So you're either a bus ride or, well, if you don't have a subway, you're only a bus ride away or walking distance. So you're very, very restricted to the providers in your community. And if you're poor, more than likely you live somewhere where there's a lot of other poor people. So the health care that you can get is not going to be that good. Um, you may have some community health providers that provide good care, but they tend to be full, and it takes a long time to get referrals. Um, so you're going to be, again, the short end of the stick with your civilian provider. And if your VA, again, if the VA refers you out to a specialist, they're going to probably more than likely be connected to the same network as the community providers that provide help to the poor as well. It's not to say that you're getting bad medical care. Um, my experience, that's regional. I've found in the Saginaw community, it's hit and miss. Some providers just don't care. Other providers are so overworked that they don't care about the patient. They just want to get you in and out. And then other providers clearly should not be unsupervised in their practice because they're academically incompetent. And then others are so arrogant they think they don't need any scientific investigation into an illness. They could just, oh, it's this, I'm sure. Even when they're contradicted by scientific investigation, possibly because you challenge them, they'll ignore it, and then it'll go in the very bottom in a couple of lines of a discharge report or an appointment visit notes. Go in the very bottom section of the notes. But yeah, I'm not impressed with medical care here. It's a crapshoot, and I don't gamble with my health or the health of my family. So that being said, they have a lot of work to do. They really do. A lot of work to do. And if you're older and you have complicated health issues, I don't know. I would have more than one doctor. That's the approach I'm thinking. Having more than one doctor, and just, make everybody copy, print out, even if you have to pay for the paper, and take stuff to each doctor and share. That way you don't have to worry about their network, their communication pathway. You're facilitating it yourself. But now, if you're poor and you're doing a comp claim with the VA, I mean, disability, they both apply the same thing. You're really, really, you're not even at the short end of the stick. You're with an empty hand. Um, for example, if your medical exams if your your CNP exam is outside of your county, then you got a real hard time to get to it. Because I've made multiple calls today, but it looks like the VA is not willing to help with that. They say it's your medical examiner's responsibility. Really? Um, you're supposed to get, for anything related to the VA, you're supposed to be given transportation. C&P is still a part of the VA. They fall under the larger Veterans Administration. Anyway, um, from what I've found with the Saginaw VA, if you're doing anything C&P, don't accept support. Matter of fact, they may try to undermine you. Matter of fact, they will try. At least a couple of people that touch your paperwork for your your patient file will try to undermine you. You know, as I said before, that's the problem with extremist conservatives. Um, they want to undermine claims. They don't like one-party medical care, and they're against disability. They think that everybody should work until they're in a hospital bed, then you put them in a nursing home. It's the most horrible type, you know? And it's not just QAnoners, the extremist QAnoners. This is just people in general who are extremist conservatives. Oh, if you're disabled that much, you should probably be in an institution. It's horrible, horrible attitude. And then you find some of the more extremist people from the left. Oh, you're on fully disabled? Okay, everything should be under government care. You don't have to be in a nursing home, but you should be in a government high rise with all kinds of resources at the expense of the taxpayer. And oh, yeah, you lose all control of your life. Can't own a weapon. Matter of fact, you're not even deemed qualified to hunt. Um, Maybe you can drive for a little while until they take away your license because, oh, your eyes are bad or your hearing's bad or your arthritis is so bad you can't stop, in the appropriate reaction time. They'll find a reason to just absolutely disable you. You're seeing two sides of the same coin. So if you're a veteran who's poor and you're doing a comp claim, at least, if you're in near and you go to the Saginaw VA, expect to be sabotaged. We keep meeting people time and time and time again. And, I make these videos or I, hold people accountable and people retaliate. I don't know who the heck is appointing these people to these positions, but let me tell you, there's some people at OPM. They really need to be relieved of duty, you know. And the current administration, I've been telling people all along, any extremist political representation now should be suspect. I don't care if they're extreme Democrat or extreme Republican. I applaud people that can move across party lines to look at issues, even when their party, especially the Republican Party, is trying to stomp them out of existence. Now, I'm not saying that the Democrats have never done this. They've done this too. They've stomped people out of existence too, especially when people take a position of questioning large companies, especially companies that work with government contracts, and they question them and they hold them accountable and they're stomped into retirement. Democrats do the same stuff. That being said, so, if you're a veteran and you're doing a comp claim and you're poor, which if you're truly disabled, unless you've lived a life and you have a retirement and a pension, many veterans, you know, pre Gulf War era, that's pre 1990s, that's how things went. A lot of your Vietnam vets, a lot of your World War One, World War Two vets, Korea vets, Grenada, Panama, Balkans, Somalia. A lot of this area, well, actually Somalia was 90s. But anyway, a lot of these areas you worked and you have a retirement. But Gulf War era forward, this is from 1990. What first shots were fired? Early 1990, I believe. No, 91. It's February and March of 91, I think. First shots fired by Iraq. So from Gulf War, original Gulf War, Gulf or Desert Storm Desert Storm, or no, Desert Shield was first. Storm or Shield? I think it was Shield was first. Yeah, Shield was first. So anyway, from first Gulf War forward, things are different. People have a lot of issues, Um, a lot of the issues with the, Vietnam vets that did more than one deployment. Those guys, a lot of Gulf War veterans have similarity with those guys that were there in Vietnam more than once or twice. Um, so we're filing our claims younger, you know, and regardless what the VA and DoD and NIH, want to portray things. If you've been anywhere from Kuwait City all the way up into Kurdistan, you've been exposed to whether you are around a burn pit, on your base, behind your hooch, next to the latrine, wherever, whether you have one or not, you're exposed to poisonous compounds. There's sarin gas in the sands. There's almost 300 oil well fires that were spanning from southern Kuwait all the way to northern Kuwait. And then you can't forget that once we were invading Iraq, once we had secured Kuwait, we went into Iraq. Then Iraqi oil fields were set afire too. So there's more than 300, actually it was 287, I think. But that's excluding the Iraq oil fields that were set afire. So we've all been exposed to stuff, not just burn pits. The stuff stays in the sands. I have another video about that. I may not have I have a couple of initials, but I may not have lots of initials behind my name. But I said it's a confounding variable to current research regarding burn pit illnesses. People are forgetting the oil well fires that put poison into the sand. And rain is sporadic in the Middle East. You may have, when winter comes, you may have a couple of sand/rainstorms, but even if you have a couple of just rainstorms, regardless, everything goes back into the desert. So that's the confounding variable. We've all been exposed to stuff there. Even if you were in a base that had one burn pit a month, and it's, far on the far edges, where the wind blows towards it, it doesn't matter. We've all been exposed to stuff. And the hotter it is, and the less moisture, and the more sandstorms, the more we inhale. But, that's something for legislatures to, veteran legislators to, force agencies like VA, DoD, and NIH, to start doing better research and not ignoring confounding variables in current burn pit illness statistics and trying to compare apples and oranges of Iraq and Afghanistan exposures compared to places like Arifjan, Beering, Camp LSA. Actually, Camp LSA is, you have to exclude that because that's different than any of the others. It's a Kuwaiti base. They do whatever they want. When I was without going into detail, when I was a civilian contractor working on that base, the Kuwaitis would have their aircraft, and they do carbon and fuel burn off on the engines less than 700 yards from us. So they do what they want. It's their base. They would burn plastics. They'd burn garbage. It's their base. They do whatever they want. So that's kind of a different than any of the above base. But anyway, if you're a veteran and you're poor, and if you're really disabled, a lot of us have a lot of issues. The longer you're there, the more issues you have. And there's a point when you have to consider your family and you have to stop cowboying up. Because if you're broken and your thread of your life is dangling over a pit with no bottom, then you need to wake up and consider your family. You need to consider the future. If you're slowly dwindling away and you're going to die young, what does your family have? maybe life insurance. If you can get a good policy with all your medical issues, because if you have a good insurer and a good insurance agent, they're going to tell you the truth. Well, they have 2 years to challenge your policy, and in the end, even if the 2 years they don't challenge, if they find one tiny iota that wasn't accurate in when you wrote the policy and your exams, if there were exams, or if they can find that tiny iota that relates to, the policies of the rules of the policy, that negate certain things, you may get challenged after death. So you got to consider your family, and there's nothing wrong with getting some extra medical care. And while you're getting them extra medical care, so you can find out what is your best medical condition, what's your best medical maximum medical improvement. That's what we call it in forensic medicine. Your maximum, your MMI. Once you reach your MMI, and while you're getting there, you have some kind of compensation and death benefits and insurance specifically tailored to you as a veteran who's disabled. Your family will be safe. And then, once you're at your MMI, then you have more opportunity. You have more resources to, you know, get another certificate, get another degree, open a business that's catered to what you like. Why not spend the last years of your life with your family doing a job you like? And that you're the business owner, you control everything, it's you. And then you pass it down to your children. And whether they like it or not, you will have spent a couple of years building a business that even if your children are like, oh no, I don't like wood crafting. Oh, I don't like boat building. Oh, I don't like dock making. Oh, I don't like fixing bikes. Oh, I don't like rebuilding motorcycle engines. Oh, I don't like doing schematics for houses. They can sell it. And then they have a little nest egg for themselves, just like that. Or you could hire employees to run it. Once you build it strong enough and you have income coming in, hire a bunch of employees to run it, and then you enjoy the last years of your life as a business owner and spend time with your family, and you don't have to worry about money. This is the things that veterans can do. But if you're in poverty and you can't make medical appointments, and because you complain to your VA and you try to use your resources, uh, you get even less help, and people may sabotage you even more. Most VAs, when it comes to a comp claim or a sick veteran who's filing a claim or talking about it, they stay out of it unless you're at Saginaw VA. I've been to other VAs, a couple, not a lot, but a couple, and people encourage people. They're like, hey, these are your benefits. If you're sick, file to get extra medical care and to get compensated. They don't do that at this VA. It's the opposite. Most VAs will encourage you. Now, I'm saying they can't walk in and say, okay, yep, you're sick. Here, I'm the doctor. I'll sign it. I'm not saying they do that. But they'll say, yeah, you have high blood pressure. Um, so we're going to get your 3 tests. Um, Technically, to be sure that we're doing this legit, it should be 3 different days. But technically, it doesn't have to. It can be 3 separate times within a couple of hours. But we're going to do it 3 different days. Your blood pressure, and now you have what's needed, and I'm going to get you some medication because you have high blood pressure, or your blood pressure fluctuates between high and semi-high, so I'm going to medicate you, and now you have what you need. I encourage you to file a claim for that because you're a PACT Act veteran. That's how normal VAs are. They're like, no, I can't get involved in this, but I encourage you to request your records. That's how normal VAs are. Not in Saginaw. And some of the providers around there, around Saginaw County, they've been weaponized against veterans. And if you were poor, you're poor. Again, you check those three boxes. You're poor. You come from a family that perhaps is poor or working poor. You come from a poor area of Saginaw County, and you don't have a car. Well, at a the four boxes, you're you have a lot of obstacles to overcome, and some of them you may not be able to. And you know what that does? It ruins your claim. You'll be denied, then you'll have to appeal, and then there's another year or two of your life. Yeah, they say, oh, we adjudicate claims in 3 months. 90 days is the average. But that's politics talk. That's politics speak. In actuality, if your appeal is denied, or if it's remanded, that 3 months becomes 6. Because we all know that it's hit and miss with an appeal that's automatically granted. You have to have absolute documentation and expert opinions, just like a real court case. You're just sitting in front of the VA's own pet judges. So if you're poor, again, the system is set against you, and it's not supposed to be. Why is there a difference in care, just like criminal justice, between poor and rich? And I'm seeing the gap getting worse and worse and worse. And my concern is the current administration, are they going to care for veterans? Or is the divide between veterans going to get worse between who's rich and who's poor?